Hello, and thanks for joining this episode of the Woke Weekly Podcast. My name is Walter Latham. I'm here with Sergeant Ernest J. Robinson, our co-host, and our subject matter expert on all things Washington. You know what's going on. This show is going to be about DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. A lot of things are happening around that, and then we seem to be the victim. According to a lot of people, they think we're the victim. And I know we are the victim because we've been working very, very hard. But I never wanted to consider myself a token. Did you see how those companies like Meta and a few others jumped on, the removal or, the revocation of DEI? All right. You know why? Because of Trump, because they're greedy. And because there's a cost associated with it. But before we go any further, before I reach down for your expertise, I do want to define what DEI is. All right, DEI, and I have here reparations, because that is the offset to DEI. So before we get into the definition of reparations, let's start talking about what this is. All right, DEI. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. They are interconnected concepts aimed at fostering a fair and representative environment in various settings such as workplaces, educational institutions, etc., communities. So diversity. What do we mean by diversity? That refers to the presence of differences within a given setting, including various identities such as race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, age, ability, and socioeconomic status. It also emphasizes the importance of including people from different backgrounds and different experiences. Now, equity can be defined under DEI. It involves ensuring fair treatment, access, opportunities for all. It recognizes that different people may need different resources or supports to achieve similar outcomes, and it seeks to address systemic barriers that contribute to inequality. And last, inclusion. This is the practice of creating an environment where all individuals feel welcome, respected, and valued. It goes beyond simply just having diverse representation. It focuses on actively engaging and empowering individuals from all backgrounds to participate fully in the community or organization. So together, DEI initiatives aim to create a more just and equitable society by promoting understanding, respect, and collaboration among individuals from different backgrounds. All right? So before we get into the show, I do want to say that there are some negatives, and these are perceived more by the corporations and non-minority employees. And here are some of them. Critics argue that DEI efforts can sometimes lead to tokenism. Yeah, I heard that one. When I watch some of these cartoons, you got the one black character in there, So, tokens. Resistance to backlash. These are your non-minority people are crying, saying that they're not getting the opportunity because they're giving them to less qualified black people, and that's a lie. But hey, that's the way they see it. That's their perception. They focus on process over outcomes. Sometimes DEI efforts may focus more on the processes of inclusion rather than the actual outcomes and impact on equity. Now, these are negative impacts, as stated by some folks, and this can result in superficial changes rather than meaningful progress. And then again, you got allocations of costs. Don't forget, cost is everything to corporations. All right, you got a cost of doing business. Yeah, funding these DEI initiatives within large corporations can be very expensive. And a lot of the people that head up these programs, the DEI programs within corporations, are minority people. So when they start laying people off, which they're doing, they're already doing it on the government level. They do it on the corporate level. All right, especially Meta. These companies are big, so they could be laying off a lot of people. When you go to DEI, forget it. Most companies, the minorities head up these programs, so we're going to get laid off. Okay, so let's pivot back. So DEI. So these large corporations like Walmart, Meta, all of them jumping on the bandwagon because to them, I guess it's a cost saving.
I don't see where it's a cost savings. I mean, even for the negative things that you were talking about as far as tokenism, resistance to backlash, process over progress, are all superficial. There's no empirical data to suggest that those are actual outcomes. It's like saying that something might not work versus the fact that we have years and decades where this has worked and has grown and profited many of these particular companies. In addition to what's also not being said is that these companies actually received funding for participating in the process of whether affirmative action, whether equal opportunity. So they actually benefited by meeting these particular by hiring a diverse organization. In addition, right, again, these companies have also, again, continued to grow, continue to profit over the years. So are they going to also roll back all of the input that was given by minorities and people of color or those who fit in the different categories? I don't think so. And I think that, and I'm not, and as we progress along with the conversation, I think people need to take into context of what, how this even happened, right? And then where it actually comes from, right? So we're talking about equal opportunity, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion is basically a result of the executive orders that goes all the way back to 1941, where President Roosevelt came out with an executive order back in the early 40s to offer protections against discrimination based upon race, color, or national origin, right? So this actually has a long history that has come to DEI, which has ended many of the preceding particular programs. So that executive order then goes into the executive order that Harry Truman came out with. If y'all remember the movie Men of Honor, one of my favorite movies, with Robert De Niro and Cuba Gooding Jr. Cuba Gooding Jr. plays a sailor who actually became the first Master Chief deep sea diver in the Navy. But anyways, there's the situation where Harry Truman, he desegregated the military in 1948. So again, we're not even talking about something 150 years ago. We're talking about within the last 70 years, almost 80 years, that happened. So that took place. Then after that, then there was an executive order by President Kennedy. Then you had the Equal Pay Act of 1963, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. We get into the Voter Rights Act of 1965, which is not necessarily germane to this particular topic. But then you get into things like age discrimination. Then you get into other things where, again, continuing to support equal opportunity. And it spells it out where EEOC, there's where they give the authority for litigation based upon discriminatory practices, educational with Title VII, which actually has a lot of our abilities to claim for religious purposes or medical purposes to be treated fairly and equally within the workplace. So a lot of those rights comes out of those particular things, rehabilitation acts, Then you get the civil service reform. Then there's then we get into age discrimination, and that's in the 80s. And then you get into immigration reform. And again, so all of these topics, right, that were played over the last, at least now we're entering now the last 40 years, right, of different things that actually have come up. Then you get the ADA, so the Americans with Disability Act, that happened in 1990. So that's to stop discrimination against those who who have some type of disability, right? Then we have again with old workers, and then age discrimination again, and Civil Rights Act of 1991, so forth and so on, until we get into a lot of these things have now with DEI, right? It's just the focus on making sure that people of a diverse background are allowed to be included in the workspace. All of these individuals, to include from everything from affirmative action and equal opportunity, DEI, everyone has to be qualified to being able to do the job. I just gave an example to somebody else I was on a call with, and they were saying that when on the news they were reporting about the all-black female air pilots and saying that they were DEI hires, and there were these influencers who were like, if I find out there was a black female, I'm not flying on the plane because they were DEI hired. To undermine the fact that these women or anyone who was in these particular positions did not complete the prerequisite number of hours that it takes to being able to fly a plane, the success rates and everything else that they do in order to be qualified to be considered a pilot, as if they were just random black women who are walking on the street and they're saying, hey, you're a black woman, come fly this plane. And they successfully fly the plane just magically because, I mean, well, black women are magical, right? Like that. But, you know, right. But that's not the purpose of it. And so a lot of people have kind of shied away, but, you know, I digress. Yeah.
But you see, the thing is, Ernest, and I heard the things, the points that you made, but it still comes back to episodes that I have done in the past, talking about, you know, the discrimination and talking about reparations and things of that nature. Okay, so Trump is basically saying he's going to roll back all DEI initiatives, automatically fired a lot of people over the last couple of days. Okay? All right, so what I have to say to him, and I'll say it to our audience, is that DEI is not what we want. We don't want, if you're going to take away things to help up the Black American, okay, after over 400 years of being beat down, enslaved, and treated like, you know, non-human, and you're going to want to take away one of the things that's trying to level a playing field that it's way uneven. You know, the white guys here, and we're down here somewhere. Okay? I mean, I'm looking at back, you know. But we're at the bottom of the barrel. Anyway, if they're going to do that, what's the name of this show? I named this show The Removal of DEI plus the related layoffs, which is going to be massive, equals reparations. That's the only way on the other side of the equation to balance things out. If they're going to take away every initiative to address the systemic racism of this country and to bring us up on par, you don't have to do all of these things. You don't have to have DEI, equal rights. You don't have to have that. Just give us our $37 trillion reparations. That is it.
No.
I mean, it's not going to change. It's going to get worse. Now, I mean, I understand you, Ernest, and I appreciate you, or your position. But this is my position, is that they owe us deferred wages, they owe us punitive damages, and the ongoing systemic racism, which is prevalent today.
Right.
They owe us that money.
Right.
Okay? If they satisfy the Japanese and the Jews and all that, hey, what about the African American?
Yeah.
All right? They've done more to us than the Jews or the Japanese or anybody, Chinese, anybody.
Yes.
They're not more. Then we had a stupid person from South Africa. He should check his DNA. I don't know what to say about him. And you know who I'm talking about, Elon Musk, to say that everybody was a slave at some time throughout history, which is totally irrelevant. I mean, because the guy, I don't know. I don't want to talk about Elon Musk. This is not what it's about. I want to say I want to speak to what can we do to address the removal of DEI, even though some corporations like Microsoft and Costco are going to maintain their DEI in place. Okay? But the majority of them are jumping at it because there's a cost associated with DEI. And you said that the government offsets that? I don't know. But they're looking at the cost.
So again, the cost itself, I think, is also something that is superficial, because again, there's a gain for it as well. There are tax write-offs that many of these companies actually receive. There are incentives that these companies receive. There are incentives to being able to hire felons. There are incentives to hire people who have disabilities, which is part of the reason why that those questions are actually asked on many of those on the job applications. If you look, there's incentives to hire veterans. There are incentives to hire women. So the thing is that many of these companies are disingenuous when they're talking about the costs associated, because they're not talking about the gains associated. And then on top of that, they're not actually talking, actually disclosing what those negative impacts are. And when it comes down to shareholders, individuals who have any type of investment or share within that particular company, are owed the ledgers, right? In most cases, for most investors are able to have access to them. And I know companies like Walmart, which is a publicly shared entity, where many of their employees are also stakeholders within Walmart. So it kind of is counterintuitive to actually go against where most of your shareholders are not necessarily in support of rolling back DEI initiatives.
Well, the major shareholders of Walmart are, Trumpers.
Yeah, the major ones, but
the
again,
founders, the people that originated Walmart. Okay,
absolutely.
So they're good old boys.
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
So they can't wait to get rid of stuff like that. It's forced upon them.
Right. And but the point I'm making is that the things that they're saying does not actually hold water. That's all I'm saying, is that they are not being true about what these particular negative impacts are outside of a potential bruised ego because a person of color or someone who identifies within the LGBTQIA community, or someone who has a disability, or someone who's a veteran happened to get a job over a regular white male, if that's what they're saying, because even women are a part of the diversity for these particular programs. So the only person who happens to be in some way, because even diversity still would include to make sure that there are white males on certain boards and certain jobs and certain fields and everything else. So the purpose of diversity is simply that. To roll back potentially could have negative implications on many of the other programs. And one thing that wasn't mentioned, and that's was not necessarily being talked about in mainstream media, is that these particular rollbacks on DEI have affected the equal opportunity program in the military. Yeah, I got you.
Oh, yeah, well, we're going to get to the military. I don't want to start the military yet because he has specific things for the military. But what I want to say is that, I've been harping on reparations for a long time, since I had this show, going back to 2019.
Yes.
I've done a series of shows on reparations. But for those people that don't know what reparations are, here's a definition of reparations. Reparations refers to compensatory measures taken to address past injustices and
Yes.
harms inflicted on a
Yes.
specific group of people, which is ongoing for us,
Uh-huh.
and related to systemic discrimination, slavery, colonization, and other forms of oppression. All right? And these measures can include financial compensation, land restitution, public apologies, and programs aimed at improving social and economic conditions for affected communities. All right? And if you extract that out and say, how does this apply to the Black American? It fits him like a 42 long used to fit for me. You know what I mean? That's a fit. All right? So I'm only saying that they're rushing to claw back all of these programs that are supposedly supposed to help us. They're clawing it back, and we are going to lose jobs. Who is to say that my 35, 40-year career in financial services, I wasn't there because of DEI? I mean, they could reach back, they could go back and say, oh, we hired you back in 2000 because of DEI.
No, hired you because of that. No, because that
I know, even though it didn't exist. I'm just using that as an example.
Affirmative action. See, that's the point.
Affirmative
action was
and DEI are hand in hand.
Yes,
DEI originated from affirmative. They got rid of affirmative action, and DEI replaced it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So what I'm saying is, if they're going to they took away affirmative action, and they take away DEI, that means it's the wild, wild west out there. If a white person is the hiring manager and he doesn't like Black people, he can just go through the rigmarole with you. He doesn't have to call you in, actually.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to report back to say that, X amount of people were Black, X amount of people were white. That section on that job application that gives up that data.
Yes.
All right? That personal data. They don't have to say that. They can say, well, no, I'm going to hire my friend where I grew up with that lives on the other block.
Yep. And so
he's less qualified.
And that was, and so like for federal jobs. In federal jobs, when they put out that something is for veterans with a significant disability, therefore their internal hires or career transfers or whatever the case may be, especially when it comes down to veterans, there has to be, if a veteran does not get an interview or gets an interview and doesn't get the job, there has to be an explanation, especially if they are 30% disabled or more, or et cetera, if they're in a specific special category. There has to be an explanation as to why that individual did not either get the interview or did not get the job. It does not mean that they automatically get the job or automatically get an interview, but there has to be an explanation. And that stems from the fact that in 1972, when they did EOC, they gave equal opportunity. They gave the authority, the litigation authority was established at that time. So that's the reason why that there were initiatives that had to be met, because if not, they were subject to being sued. If they're removing their provisions of DEI now, they're removing the provision of a lawsuit. And to your point, like you said, the Wild Wild West now. Now I don't, or not necessarily Wild Wild West, but it's just definitely pre 1941.
There's no control over the process.
Yeah, and potential pre 1948, because essentially you could really desegregate, or actually not desegregate, but segregate the military again.
Oh yeah,
because they got rid of IGs, so they got rid of inspector generals or independent inspector generals.
Yes,
they have silenced the equal opportunity or put pause in the equal opportunity offices, and within our offices that we also have, like with SHARP, with the sexual harassment awareness response program, many of those programs are also hand in hand. So now reporting mechanisms, things of that nature, are also going to have negative impacts. And when it comes down to reparations, when you had said that they could just give us the $37 trillion, it doesn't.
Well, when I say that, that's not,
I got you.
The whole process behind that. That's the top, top level item. Okay? And under that, there's maybe 200,000 task to be
Understood.
completed before it can
But
be
this,
rolled out. All right, I'm just saying. All right, and it wouldn't be a check. Who knows whether it be a check in somebody's hand or, and I see it. I see it. All right, reparations, $37 trillion, folks. I see it as we have a fund of 37 trillion. When they pay, or they can give us land, whatever the equivalency in 37 trillion, they want to give us half of taxes. I don't care. They got to compensate us. All right, because you're taking away every door that has been cracked for us to get through and try to get some semblance of the pursuit of happiness. That's what's promised to us, right? Okay, so they're closing all of these doors now without looking at what happened to the 40 acres and a mule. What happened to the 40 acres and a mule? I mean, when Sherman marched on Atlanta, correct me if I'm wrong, okay, there was a discussion between the general and President Lincoln as to, should we, these people have 40 acres. Somehow or another it came up in the discussion between the two. And the president said, I think 40 acres and a mule. And that's it. We didn't get the 40 acres and a mule. What happened with Reconstruction? We can do without them. What I'm saying is, look at Tulsa. Look at Redwood. Rosewood. Look at all those self-contained Black communities that was displaced because of eminent domain. Okay? All of that. We suffer. We're suffering, man. And this administration is coming in, want to just roll back everything and just hang us out. Well, I don't depend on them. To me, I grew up in a segregated area of North Carolina where we had everything almost, except big ticket items. But we were self-contained. I went to the store, I went to a Black store. I went to the dry cleaner, I went to a Black dry cleaner. I went to a barbershop, Black. All of that was Black. We were self-contained. We didn't need anybody. I went to a Black school. I didn't graduate because they had integration. But those are the best times of my school life. All right, because they cared about us. All right, in one of my episodes, I maintained that our kids should not go to any desegregated school until they get to the 9th grade. We should educate our own kids. And I'm going off topic, but this is the way I feel, and I've always felt it. And they just playing into it, just proving my point. All right, we can't depend on them for anything, but let them pay us fairly for what they've done to us. All right, they've done so many things to us. It's just unbelievable how you can treat people that way. And yet and still, we, the 16th largest spender in terms of GDP, the 16th in the world, we are a group of spenders. We just all we do is spend. All right, so I am upset. Give us all right. That's why I would never say to anybody about reparations that a check should go to every individual. No. You should get a dividend every year. Yeah, I can see that. But you should be getting a check every year when they out the 37 trillion or whatever they agree upon. That is a low number to me. That's a low ball number.
Well,
37
that's
trillion
roughly
low ball.
around 860,000 per Black person. There's 43 million, a little over 43 million.
Well, it's 63.
Yeah, I mean, so if it's 63, then it is much less than this. You're talking about $400,000, probably. Saying that after that particular calculation. But I mean, and obviously it is a little bit, off of the nature of why we convene this particular conversation. It wouldn't matter if they all gave us $1 million a piece. If we don't have banks, if we don't have I know I got you, but it's also because we came at a some particular point in time. Because of desegregation, it wasn't the worst thing for the entirety of the country. It was the worst thing for a faction of people, because we've all been able to benefit from, like the organizations that you have worked for were diverse workforces. I mean, I
very
didn't.
little. I worked around my office, and the only other person that had I was the only black person on
I
my
got,
floor with the office.
but no.
Okay,
No.
so
So,
I mean, I've
wait,
seen
wait,
it.
wait,
So they,
but the point is, wait, hold on.
excuse
But
my
the
expression.
point is that you did not work for an all black organization, and although that, and I know that was part of the reason why we mentioned the first negative outcome of DEI being tokenism, right? But it was that company benefited from you being there, and you were able to benefit and have the life that you've been able to have as a result of you being able to work there. And no,
From hard
I
work,
didn't say it
nobody
was
gave me
easy.
anything.
And I mean, it's not it.
Well, that's what they're saying. They said what I did with DEI.
So this is the thing.
Saying.
So what has happened with the whole with DEI is that the word itself has been weaponized. Even the term with affirmative action has been weaponized, and to a particular point that as people who are the beneficiaries of either affirmative action or for DEI or any equal opportunity, we try to disassociate ourselves from it. The very purpose, the very reason why these programs have even started were for the reasons of systemic racism. So in a sense, we actually placate into the hype or the stereotype. We perpetuate it by sitting there saying, matter of fact, there was an influencer.
They even call what's her name? The lady that ran for president, Kamala. They even call Kamala DEI.
There's
everything accomplished.
Yeah.
Is DEI related.
So let me address this one thing. Let me address this one thing first, and then I'll come back to the Kamala.
Go ahead.
Make sure I write that down for Kamala. All right. So the situation, there was an influencer who got on one of the social media platforms that was talking about one of their friends who was a female sergeant major and was being overlooked, or a female master sergeant that was being overlooked for promotion and everything else. And they were very adamant, sitting there saying, we don't need your DEI, they're this, they're that, and everything else. And what I had pointed out, and I was sitting there saying that that person that you are talking about is the reason why we have DEI and reason why it's important. The fact that they are not recognizing her contributions and everything that she's done, her continuous performance, her absolute success, is the reason why we need diversity, equity, and inclusion. And the reason why we had affirmative action before is because we had very qualified, talented people of color, people of different backgrounds, LGBTQ, IA plus community individuals, people who had some type of disability, whether it was mental and or physical, and people, again, of different religions who were being systemically overlooked, intentionally overlooked, being discriminated against because of whatever particular difference and not because of their merits, right? And so we had these programs for that particular reason. So I think it's important that we actually don't give in to how the word itself has been weaponized, and the individuals who are the beneficiaries of those particular programs have been demonized, right? Because then all we're doing is giving them reason why we don't need it. Now, the situation with...
What do you mean? It's not coming back, Ernest.
That's not true.
Once it's out, it's gone. It's gone for the next 4 years at least.
That part... So, hold on.
It's gone. And it's not even codified. Is there any type of legislation that was passed for DEI?
No.
Executive order?
Most of these were executive orders.
See that? Well, that's not even law. That's just a
but the Equal Opportunity Act is legislated. So there are certain, and that's the reason why when I said in the military that it was on pause, was because that's the thing. It was on pause. You can't end it because it's legislated. And so you're going to have to get legislation in there. Now, an executive order can put everything on pause, but other executive orders have an expiration on it. And it's not for the duration of of the presidency or whatever the case may be. And it will take acts of Congress, which I'll say now, and I'll probably say at the end of the show, is the reason why if people are out there organizing and upset about the elections, one, with the primaries have started already in New Hampshire. They're going to begin throughout the remainder of this year, and everyone needs to go out there and make sure they vote. If you're not going to run yourself, make sure that you're out there voting. And if you do run yourself for a particular position, I don't care if it's for the school board, city council, make sure you qualify and all that.
And
now, the thing of, and now mentioning qualifications. Now, the elephant in the room when it comes down to how this past election ran, and when it came down to Kamala specifically, Kamala had a bid in 2020 to be the president of the United States. Kamala dropped out of that race, did not receive funding, support. She did not have the support necessary to being able. A member of Congress came in and won. They put something in Joe Biden's in there saying, I'm going to choose a woman, right? So in a sense, he had already discriminated against any male colleague because you just coming out. Because if a man came out and said, I'm only going to hire a man as the next VP, that would have been gender discrimination. So it's kind of essential. You can't have it both ways. You can't sit there and say, well, I'm only going to hire a woman, because that's gender discrimination. I digress. Now, but what ended up happening was they forced Kamala to be his vice presidential pick. So again, no one voted for her. No one supported her for president. She comes the vice presidential pick. Joe Biden wins. Now, Joe Biden then, for whatever reason, DNC supported it, or at least on the surface, they supported it. Obviously, reports are coming out now saying that many on the inside were trying to persuade the former president to kind of step aside much early on in the process. Now, where it could have happened is that they intentionally held on to it so that way it put them in a position where Kamala was the only choice. And then again, we hold a primary election where everyone voted for whomever their candidate was. At that time, Joe Biden emerging as the presumptive nominee. And then weeks prior to the DNC backs off, and then Kamala then becomes the presumptive nominee and then ultimately wins the nomination. So, whereas how DEI or affirmative action can be abused is in this particular way, where the individual, and it's not a lack of credibility on her side. Like, it's not like she was unqualified. She was a sitting senator. She was a former AG, attorney general for California. She did a lot of things, but it was for the simple fact that it was actually outside of the democratic process. And so there's a conflation because it wasn't the Democrat, it wasn't true democracy, and it wasn't necessarily DEI or affirmative action in how she got this job, because DEI and affirmative action both require for the individual to be qualified. In this particular, I know that. I'm speaking for the audience. It's not
against us. The thing is, no. The audience knows that. The audience knows that. Okay, but what I'm saying is that everything that the African American, you can take it further. So everything that the African American has successfully accomplished is because of DEI. That's the way they're making
it doesn't make any sense.
That is the way you make DEI. No, I know, but that's the way they're looking at it. DEI. You wouldn't be there without DEI.
I understand.
All right? You wouldn't be there without affirmative action. You wouldn't be there if you were not the
wait.
Okay?
Right. But see, there's a conflation in that, right?
Okay.
because
what
right,
complexion?
because tokenism is not viewed upon in a highlight by itself. Diversity, equity, inclusion is supposed to be something that should be celebrated because it is recognizing the elevation of diversity, of equity, not equal but equitable acts, and inclusive actions within an organization based upon the merits of the person. Right. No, I got you.
I hear you.
Tokenism is more
All right.
akin to nepotism, to a person who otherwise does not have the qualifications, but we're simply choosing this person because of some other type of
almost every movie and TV show you watch, they got them in there. They got tokens all over the place. Yeah, they throw one in, Now, and I spoke to an actress that's in SAPRA, whatever you call it, Screen Actors Guild. She's a member, and she was saying that's what the producers and the directors do. They get if they can get a black guy, plus he's gay. All right, they're taking care of two daggone groups right there. They're taking care of the LGBTQ and they're taking care of the minority. And one person. That's what they look at when they bring people on. Right. That's what they look at. All right.
It's ongoing.
So it's ongoing. It's ongoing. It's
right.
there.
And which is
all right. So I don't want. First thing is, I don't want us to get off track a little bit in terms of what we should be focusing on. What we should be focusing on, all right, is that the average Trump voter doesn't know DEI from affirmative action. The only thing they know is it's not good because they watch Fox News and they heard Trump talking. All right, they didn't read into it and try to understand what it is, what it really truly is. All right, but they took that narrative and they said, okay, Trump plays into that narrative very, very well. Okay, that black people. Okay, I have to tell this story. I was considering someone for an interview, all right, coming from the real estate market, okay? And, of course, I'm not mentioning names, but that's just in my experiences and the people that I meet, all right? This guy happened to be, a foreigner. And, he came here, he very successful, built one great firm, and he's living on the water, he's got all this and that, and he's one of the largest within his space in the country. Okay? So in our discussion, he was telling me somehow or another we got into race and immigrants. And what he's saying is, the guy's from a European descent. And he said that one thing about black people, African Americans, they take too much for granted. Where the immigrant comes here and they look at this as a land opportunity, and as hard as they work hard because they can attain things and get the good life. Where the people that were born here, taking everything for granted, which he's referring to African American, the black folks. And I told him, I said, really? Is that what you think? Well, I didn't know y'all guys thought that way, not to that level. All right? But that's the way they think. I think he's typical of how they think, especially European immigrants or all immigrants that come here that don't want to be black because they think that we take things for granted. We're laid back and we don't go out there and take advantage of the opportunities that we were born with. But we weren't born with those opportunities. We go out and chase those opportunities, and we have to fight and battle 5 times or 10 times as hard as a white guy. But that's what he told me. And he's got to be typical of what a lot of them are thinking about us. That's why the white man right now is tired of us complaining. That's all we do is complain. They're tired of hearing us. They have no sympathy. They're saying to us, hey, you got this, you got that, you got all these opportunities, and you're not going out there. All you rather do is sit home, watch TV, play video games, and all this kind of stuff. That's the way they see us as a monolith.
Yeah.
All right. When I say monolith, I mean the black people in that in that funnel.
Right. So
in that silo. You were the silo of us. That's the topic. Taking things for granted.
Right. But the thing is that unfortunately, there are black people who have the same perception. And
of course, Of course,
Yeah.
we
So
all
the
got
thing
that
is
problem.
that I mean I don't think that it's something that is germane necessarily to just a foreigner, because the individuals, like we've had members of black members of Congress.
I'm just telling you their
Yep, but we've
viewpoint.
had
That's their
black members of
viewpoint.
Congress who've also tried to perpetuate that. They tried to sit there and say
Oh yeah,
we
we got
have
traitors.
we have every opportunity to go to school. We have every opportunity to open up a business. You have every opportunity to being able to do everything that everyone needs. You don't need diversity, equity, inclusion. It is compromising the good integrity, moral, ethical values of all these particular companies who have to put efforts into teaching diversity, equity, inclusion in order to being able to have equal opportunities for work and equal pay and everything else, and to not have these discriminatory factors, meaning that these companies should have the prerogative to being able to discriminate against you because of your age, because of your physical ability, because of your appearance, because of what you believe in, because of who you marry or who you sleep with. That they should that the inconvenience of having diversity, equity, inclusion is such an atrocity that we need to do away with these programs. If for someone who is born outside of this country and are constantly seeing that type of rhetoric, especially spoken by other people of color who are echoing the negative sentiments behind having affirmative action or DEI or equal opportunity or age discrimination acts or vocational or rehabilitative acts or returning citizen acts that are protective protective provisions to being able to provide those equal opportunities, just being able to provide a chance for people, then how do we blame that person who's from the outside looking in? And on top of that, there is empirical data where we have, unfortunately, a lot of urban communities who are not necessarily doing what they necessarily need to do. Now, the falsehood about that is that there are more black people, which there aren't. There are more white people who actually are on a lot of social services, receiving food stamps or other type of general welfares, right? They're all receiving
Majority of
other
them.
type
Yep,
of general
yep.
welfares in order to being able to sustain themselves, right? And so there is a narrative
Right.
that has been perpetuated over decades. And so to being able to, and which is, I guess, the importance of having these types of conversations, right? And then kind of putting that out and engaging our members. So anyone's listening to this, please like, subscribe, comment, share with, your friends, families, enemies, whomever, that can all listen and contribute. But it's important to have these types of dialogues, right? So that we're actually able to kind of take a look at it. And one of the things I was in there saying, especially about what's happening right now over the past, it's only been 1 week and 1 day to the day for this administration, right?
Yeah, he's done a lot. You can imagine what he's
Right.
going to do in the next 6 months.
And imagine that for the next 3.5 years, 3 years. So
That's right.
the
Right. But
yeah.
Ernest, before you go any further, though, I do want because I want to talk a little bit about the birthright, the citizenship, and how they want to remove that. But before that, I do want to look at the proposal for reparations that was sponsored by John Conyers out of Maryland. I think John Conyers is no longer
Michigan.
with us. God bless him. But
Out of
John
Michigan.
Conyers, yes, out of Michigan, and he put forth a proposal back in 1989, and in the proposal, he wanted just a study of reparations. Just take a look at it, all right, and establish a commission to study it, develop some reparation proposals for African Americans. And the bill was introduced in various forms over the years, and it hasn't gotten any traction. Okay? I know there have been some states like California had a reparation task force, and they presented some proposals statewide, okay, which included recommendations for direct payments to eligible Black residents and policies to address systemic inequalities. New York City back in 2022. All right, announced the formation of a task force. I wonder what happened to that. You got to follow up on that. Chicago, same thing. All right, they began offering reparations to victims of police torture, providing financial compensation, which is, neither here nor there with that. That's not it. But various cities are looking at, and states are looking at the possibility of providing reparations or settling. Okay, there has to be a settlement. That is, you have the Jewish people with the Holocaust. Understandable, they got some satisfaction from the Nuremberg trials, where they hung a lot of these Nazis that killed Jewish people, and they had some satisfaction from that. And on top of that, they got the state of Israel in 1948. So they got some reparation, but we haven't gotten anything. People should realize that white people right now are, closing themselves in, insulating themselves like they did back during Reconstruction, when they promised the black man, the ex-slaves, that they would get 40 acres and a mule. All right? But what happened? We had senators, we had congressmen that were elected from the South, the deep South, because back then Mississippi had more black slaves than white people. So we were able in some of these southern states to
we had
get voted
1,500
into Congress. But what came about? That came about with Jim Crow. What did it bring about? Jim Crow. Instead of the white North protecting the former Africans in the South, Jim Crow became.
So we have to really kind of contextualize like all of that, and so without going into it.
I contextualized it. I contextualized it from my viewpoint.
But I'm saying, but adding in the layers that during the civil rights, Civil War, right? Slavery was outlawed everywhere, but the North, meaning that slavery was actually still legal in the North. The purpose of what Lincoln's emancipation was to cripple the southern states. States. And so that part did occur. Yes, the 40 acres and a mule, but then you had the Great Compromise. Then you had, they were going to sharecropping. There were over 1,500 elected officials, black elected officials across the country. Obviously, at that particular time, a lot of blacks were Republicans at that time, because Lincoln was a Republican, and Republicans led the initiative at that particular time to being able to end slavery. And so what you had Northern Democrats and you had Southern Dixiecrats, right? That formulated the Democratic Party, that wound up switching their party from Democrat to Republican in order to being able to oust the black leadership that was there. You had your first black sheriffs and judges and senators and so forth and so on. All there. So by the time we get to the turn of the century of 1900, they had already kind of decimated them as far as beating out all of those seats over that course of period of time, to where you don't even have a black governor until 1990 in Douglas L. Wilder in the state of Virginia. So he was the first black governor since Reconstruction.
Yes.
And so anyway, so you had all of those things all of that played out.
Yeah, without the
protection, but it wasn't in anyone's interest necessarily to provide the particular.
When you say anyone's interest, what about us?
It no longer became, a lot of it no longer became our interest once we started, once many of our, again, those same places, those Rosewoods, those Tulsas, all of these massacres that have occurred over the course of history and time, a lot of people, I'm sure, had just been worn out. You had some of what a lot of people may not necessarily look at, right, is that our earliest civil rights leaders were in their teens and in their 20s and 30s of age. They weren't the 60, 70, 80-year-old grandmothers or whatever the case may be that were born in the late 1800s, early 19. These were 20 and 30-year-olds, right? These were college students that were leading a lot of these initiatives. And so for 20 plus years, if you started when you were 20, you stopped when you were 45. So let's say you started in 1940. It's now 1965. You've gone through World War II. You've gone through the integration of the military. You've gone through the Korean War. You've also lived through Medgar Evers, not Medgar Evers, but Emmett Till, who was lynched in 1955. You've gone through Kennedy's assassination, King's assassination. You've gone through, and the Civil Rights Act, Voter Rights Act, all the way up until 1965. You've seen a tremendous amount. I mean, for that particular person who lived through that time period. I'm saying, right.
Yeah,
so, I was saying, a person who was born in 1940, right? Or I'm gonna take that back. A person who was 20 years old in 1940. That means they were born in 1920, right? And then by 1965, and let's say, so they started advocating and doing marches and ballot drives, trying to vote and get the vote in and everything else for 25 years, right? They spent 25 years committing themselves to civil rights. And then by 1965, you done had the Civil Rights Act and the Voter Rights Act, but you've also seen Kennedy and executed. You've also seen Medgar Evers executed. You've also seen Emmett Till executed. Now this person is 20, 45 years old from 1920 to 1965. They're 45 years old, right?
Right.
And they've seen a tremendous amount. So at 45, that person may have anywhere from a 20-year-old to a 5-year-old, right, as their children. In this particular time frame, we're now having some of the first individuals who are now being integrated into college. Some of the southern schools, like in Elon University down in North Carolina, I think their first African-American was entered into Elon, I think, in the 1960s. I want to say maybe 1965, between their first graduate student, which was a female, was a
Elon.
Yeah,
Elon. I never heard of that.
It's maybe about 45 minutes from UNC. But no, it's a PWI. Yeah, that's what I was saying. So one of its first African Americans integrated into that school was around that time frame. But my point is that actually in between 1940 and 1965, you start having one black integrated into University of Texas. You get the Texas team that won the championship with the all black squad that doesn't even exist anymore. But you started having us introduced into colleges. I think, who was it? Syracuse that recruited players like Jim Brown, and then other players, prior to him, and they started recruiting black girls to go to that school so that the black athletes aren't talking to the white females. So you started getting the separation in between what going and supporting black initiatives, and then going to white institutions, going to the white movie theaters, going to this and going to that. And so there becomes this separation, as well as the person who is your father and grandfather who lived during the 1920s, who are not in support of having those things anymore. And they're more focused on, protecting their children, protecting their family, and growing and trying to keep their head above water, so that way they're not hung or shot or whatever the case may be. And so all these things perpetuate over the course of time.
I want you to comment on Trump, the military, and ending, getting rid of
transgender.
transsexual?
Yeah.
Transgender people. What do you think about that?
So I think the military itself has come up. The military, I think, is a microcosm of the macro, right?
Society.
So
Right.
all of the strides that we've made in society have, in so many cases, bled over into the military, and I think has created a much more inclusive force, right? That I don't think that there's a need to turn any of those things back, because we need as many people who are willing to serve to being able to serve.
Yeah, well, maybe
I
the white
doubt
people will take their
it,
place.
because
This is a good reel here.
Yeah.
This is a reel.
I doubt it.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, the irony, right, is the person who is making all these executive orders ducked and dodged the ability to serve within the military.
That's right.
So there's that
That's
issue,
true.
right?
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
And I think that even the situation with birthright, citizenship itself, and the threat of deportation has an effect on our military as well, because some people actually join the military for the purposes of being able to seek their citizenship. It's one of the legal ways, right?
You're right.
One
right.
of the legal ways of
great.
being able to get your citizenship. But if your citizenship hasn't been granted as of yet, then does this person who served in the military honorably get pulled from the ranks and then deported back to whatever country in which their parents came from? Because many of them are again, and that determines again whether it's birthright, whether they were born here in the United States, or if they were born in another country, came to this country, decided to serve the military, and has been waiting for a couple of years now to being able to get their citizenship. I think it has a negative impact on rolling back our equal opportunity programs that we have in here. I think it potentially can open up for a lot of chaos and confusion, because whereas if you were to do something that was racially charged, if you were to discriminate against somebody, if you were to make them work extra hours and things that were beyond the scope of what they were here to do, right?
80 hours a week.
You're violating. You would have been in violation of equal opportunity and subject to an audit or an investigation from the Inspector General. And so now some of those things have been put on, and a lot of those things have been put on pause. And I think that there's a potential opening for some very bad things to happen and occur, because those protections are now lost.
Absolutely, Ernest. Absolutely. But before we close, a lot of people are afraid, okay, because they see us being one of those dominoes that's going to fall. That means the gains that we've made, which are, however, they're not. I wouldn't throw them out. Okay, we got about 10% of what we need. The other 90%, we're gonna have to really come together as one. And until such time as we become together as one, and this is for the audience, until we can come together as one unified people, they're going to throw everything at us, because they're going to make us respond. They're going to make us draw the line in the sand, okay? Because, as they say, you can kick a dog around but so much and he's going to bite you, right? So the same applies to this situation and the situation that will be coming up under this administration. All right. So I just want to tell y'all guys, as I said, you're not getting anything out of the government. They're not, just act like they're not there. Just move on with your business, how you can succeed, how you and your family can succeed. That is the issue. Okay? Until such time as, we can't take anymore, then we will make that stand. We'll draw that line in the sand and say, okay, that's enough. We are not taking this. Now, because they're going to push us to it. They're definitely going to push us to it. They got to. They got to know where they can leave off. Okay? And all y'all guys are using Facebook, and I use Facebook, and I use Instagram, and I use Messenger and all this kind of stuff. One of the first guys to jump on this DEI wagon was Mark Zuckerberg. Jump right up there. Yeah. We gonna get rid of that department. We're gonna fire those people. We're gonna let them go. So right now we're in a bad spot. But that's just like a prize fight. You in the second, third round, you get knocked down. When you dust up, you get back up, and you start jabbing until such time you figured you can go in for the kill. And that's what we have to do. Go in for the kill when we get our ducks in a row. Until such time, we're going to be pushed and pushed and pushed. And y'all guys are going to be crying. That's the way it's going to be. All right, under Trump. He doesn't like us. I don't care. I don't really, to me, he could be here or not. I wouldn't miss him. All right? But he is the president, so, I give him, I give him that respect. He's the president. So people voted him in. So they voted him in. Everybody has their reasons for their vote. Okay? You vote your, as they say, you vote your issues. All right?
Yeah.
That's what you vote.
Hey.
That's what they say. Yeah, So, we're going to do what we got to do here. Just hope y'all guys, subscribe, follow, like, listen, because, we try to add value. And look at the show notes. The show notes gives you an idea. Before you even listen to our podcast or our video or YouTube, don't forget we got our YouTube channel, the Walk Weekly Podcast. Don't forget about that one. And we're pushing with content out there also. But we everywhere. And we also start pushing some shorts into TikTok. And I started that before before Sunday, before that countdown, you know what I mean? But, and we also on X, unfortunately, we have to be where the people are. Just same with Facebook. We got to be where the people are. Same thing with Instagram. We can't, that's a channel for us. So that's why we're there. Doesn't necessarily mean that's why you could be there, but, hey, you do what you want to do in those terms with Zuckerberg and the rest of them that fell on this get rid of DEI bandwagon. Okay? But y'all guys just trust me and trust that, we're going to be bringing you the content that you need to hear. Even though you may have heard it, it's nothing wrong with hearing it a second time. Just reaffirm what you think you already know. Right? Okay. Mm-hmm. So, Ernest.
Yes, sir.
Sarge, any last words?
No last words other than just making sure that, again, please like, share, subscribe. It is going to be a very tough next 4 years, but it's not necessarily thinking 4 years. Think of it as from year to year. So meaning that please make sure you register to vote. Make sure you make a plan to go vote. Understand the primaries. There are special elections that may end up coming up. The general election is every single November. I know it's going to be tough for some.
Oh, well, yeah, because they stopped any funding on anything.
Supportive service, so any supportive services. So food stamps, Pell Grants, and potential support for any other particular grants that are supporting any particular special initiatives have also potentially have been impacted. So please make sure that you make plans, contingencies. Make sure you vote in each and every single election. If there's something that you do not know or do not understand, please make sure you reach out to somebody so that we can have a conversation and be informed about any decision that you may make. Again, please like, subscribe, share, comment on our podcast so that we become better and provide you with better content.